Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA stock. Let's go over what is happening to the stock, what has happened to the market, what we can expect going to next week. And yeah, I'll give you my thoughts. If you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, updates, technical analysis, whatever. If you enjoy that stuff, well, again, I do share my thoughts with my members on YouTube, right? I have a YouTube membership. Link is below if you're interested to join. Constantly share these thoughts with them, technical analysis, options flow, etc., etc., etc. Always sharing these things. This is just all today. There's a lot of posts today. $3 a month. That's all it really is. Just $3 a month. Includes Teslas as in the first tier. Sometimes other stocks as well. Or $5 gives you access to the second tier, which includes NVIDIA as well. But jumping into it, NVIDIA closing the day up a nice 4.2% for the memes, closing at $111 per share, which compared to the market is going to be a slight outperformance for sure. Absolutely. So what does this mean moving forward for NVIDIA, right? Is NVIDIA good to go? Is it safe? Is it ready to rocket and, all that good news, or is it about to not rocket? I'll give you my thoughts, right? So, we talked about NVIDIA moving like this, right? This is almost moving as expected, right? We mentioned how we wanted a nice gap up or gap down today. We didn't really get one, but you can see, and I was telling my members, I don't want to scroll through because I did a lot of messages today. Maybe if I can find it, but I'm sure you believe me if I say it. I talked about NVIDIA, how it's essentially turning, I think it was this one actually here, right? Was it this one? Was it this? No, that was way after it happened. I talked about it in the morning. I'm sure you believe me, right? But essentially I was mentioning how this first hour candle, even the 15-minute candle, how, when it opened up, it started to take this range and it turned into support, right? This candle right here, you can see this, obviously a lot of resistance on these candles here. This one opened actually slightly above them and then came down into it from above. That's usually a good sign. And it was holding. And we started to see the wick appear, which shows that the buyers are clearly stepping in and clearly trying to turn this area, this 105, 106 range into support. And then it, of course, did exactly what we said it would, which was, of course, naturally make its way higher, right? To that next range. That next supply is on a big one too. And this, of course, is, well, starting at 111, going all the way up to about that 114-ish range, give or take, right? This whole region right here, right? So what's next, right? I mean, what is the stock going to do here, right? That's the big question, right? Is it going to break past it or what is it going to do? Well, there's a few things. I personally think it'll get rejected here. Now, obviously, I could be wrong, right? If it breaks past it, it breaks past it. Great. As of right now, I naturally expect this to get, resisted. The bears will to defend this area, right? The way they did here, the way they did here, the way they did here, and the way they probably will here. Now, I think eventually it'll break. I actually am leaning more overall optimistic, again, overall. But in this specific instance, I actually wouldn't be surprised if it gets another rejection. And then the next test, that's when it breaks. And I'll explain why, right? So number one, RSI entering overbought territory. Now, naturally, overbought doesn't necessarily always mean it has to top. I mean, it did back here, but it doesn't always have to mean that, right? But NVIDIA doesn't have the same feel that, for instance, like Tesla has right now. Tesla's also overbought on the RSI, but Tesla feels pretty squeezy. NVIDIA doesn't have that squeezy feel to it. At least I don't think it does. It doesn't feel like that to me, right? I could be wrong. Again, I could be wrong, but it doesn't have that feel. So because it's overbought, we could see a bearish divergence where, the stock does actually go a little bit higher, closer to that 113, maybe even briefly into the 114s region. Then we get a bearish divergence on the RSI, like maybe we go down a bit more, then make our way up like this, right? The RSI does something like this, we get a bearish divergence, right? That is a possibility. But the point is the fact that around this region, I do expect some serious resistance to start kicking in, some serious turbulence. And assuming it does, and assuming we remain below that $3-ish range, I expect NVIDIA to get a rejection and make its way lower. The question, of course, is where? Well, it depends on how fast it rejects and how fast it moves down. If it's very, very quick, we can actually make our way back down, even in the middle of next week, all the way back down to like very low 100s, like 102, 101. And if it happens really quick, back to even $100 per share. But we'll say close to $100 per share. 102, we'll say roughly, right? Again, it depends on when, of course, it happens. If it takes a bit longer and we kind of zigzag like this instead, easily can make our way back down to 105. Again, it just depends on how quick it happens. But why is this important? Because I think NVIDIA's and why do I think it'll break above this range up here? I just mentioned 111 to 114. Because the way I look at it right now, NVIDIA and AMD are both setting up almost the exact same pattern, which is, it actually looks a little bit cleaner on AMD. I'm going to use AMD for now, but it's exactly the same on NVIDIA. It just looks a little cleaner here, maybe because I have less lines. I don't know. But same idea, right? Again, pretty much the exact same scenarios as NVIDIA. Excuse me. Ooh. Again, a rejection, right? Back to the bottom of this trend line, right? Which is going to be sitting down here, which again, in NVIDIA's case, I'll just use NVIDIA. What am I doing? Again, low 100s, we'll say. But it's a massive, massive rising triangle. And that's why I wanted to use AMD. It actually looks cleaner. It's a massive rising triangle. It's a rising triangle pattern. If you haven't seen a rising triangle pattern, that's actually what Tesla was just in, it broke out of. But it's essentially a rising triangle. It looks something like this, right? A bit of an uptrend, flat resistance, rising lower trend line support, breakout, right? That's exactly what we're doing, right? Now, granted, it didn't come in from an uptrend, so that could make it less valid, I guess. But the point is the fact that, again, they look the exact same. And NVIDIA, you can argue, is kind of doing something like that. I mean, you can argue this was the uptrend, I guess. But the point is the fact that it's making higher lows, right? But it's getting resisted at equal levels. And that's usually the characteristics of a rising triangle. So if we do get that rejection here, which at the moment I expect it to, now maybe we don't, obviously I don't know for sure. But if we do, and as of right now, until proven otherwise, I assume we will, I'll move back down once again to essentially put in a fresh new higher low. We consistently make these higher lows over and over and over and over. And then from here, we bounce up and then we come back up to retest it once again, sometime maybe by even end of next week, roughly, right? But then is when I expect it to potentially start getting that breakout. That's when I expect the breakout to happen. And this is when I expect NVIDIA to finally make its move to the upside. So that's what I'll be personally looking for. That's how I'll be kind of playing the stock right now and eyeballing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's see how that actually ultimately plays out, right? But that's going to be my main focus right now on NVIDIA. And we'll see how that ultimately plays out and what it actually means for the stock. But that's my perspective. Going over to the weekly time frame very quickly. The weekly is still kind of haunting the stock, obviously, right? It really is trying to look better. Like even the RSI, you can see, is trying to finally peek its head above that simple moving average on the RSI. It's trying to get there. The stock feels like it's cooled off a good amount, but it's not perfect just yet because that 111 to 114 area I just talked about on the 1 hour and even the daily, well, it's important on the weekly as well. That's exactly the range these last 4 weekly bars have also been rejected at, right? This 111 to 114 region. That needs to snap, guys. Not only does it need to snap, it needs to close above it and it needs to turn it back into a support, like an obvious support, right? That's what needs to happen. I think it will happen. I personally believe it will happen. But it might not be this exact moment right here, right now. Like I said, we could still get that one more rejection, head lower, again, 105, 102, something like that. And then from there, we get that higher low, and then we break above it, and then we turn into support, and then we head higher. But nonetheless, 111 to 114, very, very crucial. Break above that and hold it, well, that's great, because then that sets up for an actual ultimate breakout on the daily, for instance, or the weekly there, whichever one you want to look at. But then it ultimately sets up a nice little situation where, again, breaking above is essentially closer to $120 per share, gets like a real true breakout. But in order to even get to that stage, we need to get past this 111 to 114 supply region, resistance region, whatever you want to call it, right? That needs to get broken. I think it will, like I said, but I think it'll be something like this. If I had to take a guess, I think it'll look something like this. That's kind of like my rough, if I had to bring out a fortune ball, I think it'll look something like this, personally speaking. And then we break out and then we head higher. And, once you break out of this downward channel, I think that's when the stock really will start uptrending, because right now it's still downtrending, but we really want to break above that. Like another key level arguably is to break, so this high is really good, but the recent low that we set was off of this recent swing high, arguably right around here. So that's why this kind of 120-ish region, which is this sort of pivot point right around here, is also important to break, which is pretty close to where the channel top lines up as well. So that's what I'll be looking for NVIDIA in the coming days and even weeks, right? Get a rejection, come back down, break above, get rejected there, and then make its way higher. And then once it really breaks above these levels, that's when it really can start taking off. But even just breaking above 111 to 114 should be, kind of like that, the pregame, the pregame to the main game, if that makes sense, right? It'll give us like an idea that there's a good chance we're probably going to get a natural breakout and overall move higher. But that's kind of what I'm looking for in NVIDIA right now. That's, again, the simplest way of putting it, not overcomplicating it or anything like that. That's how I'm eyeballing it. That's what I'm looking for. Pretty simple stuff. Options flow towards the end of the day got some bullish flow, which is nice to see. Definitely some nice bullish flow in NVIDIA here. Not as much as Tesla. Definitely some here for sure, but Tesla right now, I feel like, is definitely stealing the spotlight a bit. So Tesla's kind of the plaything right now, it feels like. I'm sure once Tesla's done, NVIDIA will be the next one. And that's probably, by the time Tesla's done, that's probably after NVIDIA will finally make this move finally complete, breakout, and then I think NVIDIA up here will become the new plaything, while Tesla will probably start to cool off and whatnot. So that's my current expectations. But yeah, let's see how it goes. But yeah, let's see. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on, Monday. Peace.